All right, so welcome everyone to the Stu Clark Center for Entrepreneurship webinar series. Today we're going to be talking about find the sweet spot for your target market. Thank you all for coming, and we're excited to get started today. I'm just going to run through a couple items before I toss it over to our guest speaker. So just a little bit of Zoom etiquette before we get going. Video is optional. You can have it on or off, up to you. We just ask that you stay muted throughout the webinar and use that chat function for any questions that you have for our guest speaker today. And we'll get through the questions at the end of the presentation. So just one more note, this webinar will be recorded, and all the slides that you see today will also be sent your way for future reference. So don't stress too much about taking notes or anything like that, because you will be able to reference all the material in the future. So again, there at the bottom, you can see our social media handles. Give us a follow on Insta, LinkedIn, or Twitter to stay up to date with future webinars. So this webinar is made possible because of the Stu Clark Center team. You can see all of us there. If you come visit the Stu Clark Center, you'll see one of us here. We have our director, Deborah Johnson-Young, our venture coach, Corinne Badeau, myself, the marketing coordinator, Amy Jones, the program coordinator, and Roxanne Scarth, our office administrator. So we've got a bit of a dream team, and we'd love to hear from you or see you. So stop on in at the center and come see us. And so we have a special program at the Stu Clark Center where the venture coach will meet with students for free to talk about your entrepreneurial idea. So if you're here today, you probably maybe have an interest in entrepreneurship or have some ideas that you might want to talk it out with a venture coach, and you should absolutely take advantage of our program. You can follow the steps on the screen there to sign up and book your free meeting. And Corinne Badeau would love to meet with you, chat with you, and just find out where you're at on your entrepreneurial journey, and she can probably help you out with next steps. So a couple more webinars are left in our fall 2022 webinar lineup. So we have one on December 7th, another one on December 8th. That one's not on the screen here. And then we have a fresh lineup for the new year. So check out our website. All of the webinars are there, and you can sign up for any that catch your interest, or maybe just sign up for all of them. That'd be great too. Okay, and so with that, oh, and here's our upcoming one, the December 7th, You're Not Alone. That one's going to showcase the entrepreneurial community here in Winnipeg. So very good webinar to get an understanding of what's available to you here in Winnipeg as you go on your entrepreneurial journey. So without taking up too much more time, while you are all here, find the sweet spot for your target market with Amanda Macdonald. I would like to welcome Amanda Macdonald, Director of Business Development at Economic Development Winnipeg. She has over 7 years of experience leading a team of project managers and business development professionals working at Manitoba Hydro. She has her MBA with a focus in finance, as well as her commerce degree with a major in entrepreneurship and marketing. So she really is a marketing guru. She is a specialist. I can't wait to hear what she has to present today. And again, I'm just going to remind you all that the questions for her can be put in the Q&A or the chat function on the screen here, and we'll get through to them at the end. So with that, I will pass it over to you, Amanda. And I'll stop sharing so you can share.
Thanks, Lindsay. And guru, I like that positioning. Just give me a moment here while I share my screen with you all.
Absolutely.
All right. Okay, so good afternoon, everyone. I'm pleased to be here with you today to discuss how to research and define your target market. So the target market is really just one piece of your overall marketing strategy and marketing planning activities. So I'm going to go over all of these important concepts during our session today, so that you can gain a better understanding of how to reach your customers and kind of the context with which to do that in. So Lindsay shared a little bit about my background, but I'll just dive into a little bit more detail for you. So much of my background is rooted in marketing. I did a commerce degree at Asper many years ago, majoring in marketing and entrepreneurship. And at the time, I worked for a small technology company I did marketing and sales for their software tools, which they sold to software developers around the world. So as I finished up my degree, I moved over to Manitoba Hydro and worked in various departments there, but mostly with a marketing, a service, or program management focus. So lots of my experience was within the energy efficiency department, which was known as PowerSmart at the time. It's really, selling to people opportunities to reduce their energy use. Now they're actually a separate Crown Corporation entity called Efficiency Manitoba, if you've heard of them. And in 2014, I actually moved over to a subsidiary of Manitoba Hydro International. And not as many people know about the company here in Manitoba because it's an internationally focused business. But I started as a marketing manager there and worked my way up to the director of the Utility Services Division in 2020. So MHI, as we call it, was an organization that provided energy consulting services internationally. So my division primarily worked in emerging markets, offering advisory services to electric utilities in a variety of capacities. So some of this work included training, some involved managing utilities. And though I didn't do the managing of those utilities, we had really, expert consultants to do that. They worked in countries like Democratic Republic of the Congo, Benin, Guyana, and many other regions around the world. So it was my responsibility to market these services internationally, including choosing the appropriate channels, to build out the market entry and business development strategies in partnership with our team, and of course, develop our business and overall marketing strategy. So I've now been in my current role for just over a year as the Director of Business Development with Economic Development Winnipeg. And at EDW, our mandate is to grow the economy. And my team specifically works with businesses to help ensure that they have opportunities for growth and expansion within our great city of Winnipeg. This is why I'm so passionate to see the strong entrepreneurial spirit we have in our community and being generated out of our universities as well. I see that each idea, new technology, and startup rooted here in Manitoba helps to foster innovation, skill development, and job growth in our city and province. And I want to see each of your businesses or future businesses thrive here. So customers are critical for a startup. Buyers of your product or service bring in revenue to your business, which is the lifeblood of a business. And as a startup, it can be very challenging to raise capital or pursue government funding programs if you don't have a clear idea of your target market, its scale, and how you are going to reach those customers. It's a very competitive environment for funding, and you need to have a strong business plan or case for success in order to secure funding. In many pitches that I've seen from new business founders, revenue projections are rooted sometimes in false expectation of a market penetration rate. And what I mean by that is that individuals often look at the size and growth of the industry as a whole and make the assumption that if they only capture this small percentage of that industry, they will be achieving their revenue targets and showing great growth trajectory in no time. So for example, let's assume the market for computers is $331 billion, which I found on Google recently. And as a founder with a new computer that I'm building, let's say I expect I can capture just a small, measly 1% of that market. That's a huge number. But the problem is that methodology that I've just shared, that 1% figure or $1 billion or $3 billion isn't rooted in my strategy or the specific tactics that I'm going to implement. It's just an assumption that I've made. Now, the challenge is that these common assumptions aren't properly backed up with research on the customers, the competitors, the market conditions, etc. So I, again, want to emphasize the importance of marketing. I've spent more time than I'd like in my career trying to demonstrate and, emphasize the value of marketing. Marketing isn't just advertising or social media interactions. It's strategy, it's research, and it gives you focus. So in a world with more offerings than ever, it's very challenging to get the attention of customers and inspire them to buy your products and services. It's even more difficult if you don't understand who your customers are and what drives their decision-making. For example, how do you sell to men that are 45 plus who love the outdoors and have a family? A multitude of ways. There's really no easy answer because it's extremely broad. It's much simpler and cheaper to reach your customers if you know, let's say they're men 45 to 50 years old. They're married with 2 or more children. They love hiking, camping. They earn 100K plus a year. They like to support local and often frequent shops like Mountain Equipment Company to purchase camping and hiking supplies on a seasonal basis. Can you feel how much more focused and narrow this group of individuals is? When you understand your customers, you can choose tactics that you know will reach your customers, and you can avoid tactics that won't resonate with that group of individuals. So how do you get to this focused understanding of your potential customers? You need to invest your time in marketing. So what are the tools that you can use and where do you start? Ideally, you build out a marketing strategy and a plan. Though these may sound like boring corporate documents, building a strategy and plan is an extremely valuable exercise for any founder. It's a critical component of your business plan. So what's the difference between a strategy and a plan, or a marketing strategy and a marketing plan? Well, they aren't two distinct things necessarily. They're actually linked really closely together. A marketing strategy really focuses on the high-level strategic items, such as analyzing the environment, documenting marketing goals, and identifying your unique advantages and brand positioning. It's the big picture stuff. A marketing plan involves pulling all of those components together into tactics or activities that support those overriding goals. So it's the details. So just to give an example here, my team at EDW went through a strategic planning exercise recently, and part of this involved building out strategies for our various sectors of strength for Winnipeg. For example, technology might be one, agriculture, aerospace, manufacturing. And so this wasn't a marketing strategy per se, but the concept between the strategy and the planning is similar. So for the sector strategy, we determined an ideal end state or vision with a 3 to 5 year outlook, then built out our goals to support this vision and completed analysis to determine the supporting initiatives that may help achieve that end state. And now we're entering into that planning phase. So we're looking in depth at the specific actions we need to undertake for each sector, the associated timeline and sequencing or order of those actions. And now we have to build out the budget and add our success measures as well. And I'll use an analogy to demonstrate the concept of this further. You can think of a strategy as the bridge that you build to get to the other side of the water. And really the plan may be the specific stones that you step on as you make your way to the other side. So now let's go through the key components of a marketing strategy, because you can't just research your target market in isolation of other factors. If you did so, you would be missing out on the whole picture of the environment your business is operating in, such as how the industry is faring, what threats may exist from established competitors, or how the regulatory environment may impact your ability to sell. Now, I've written a number of marketing strategies over the years, and though it does take some work, you come out at the other side with a better understanding of what will make your business successful. For example, when I started working with our business development team at MHI, I worked with the team to create strategies and plans for each of their regions. With the strategy in place, we were able to articulate our goals for the region and identify markets and clients that were best suited to our particular service offerings. This helped us understand where and how to focus our marketing efforts. Now, once we got into the planning component, looking at the sequence of activities, the actions we're actually going to do, and the cost of those, we were able to see where we needed to scale back and what was reasonable given our budgets. Oftentimes, when you're going through planning exercise, it's easy to think of so much that you can accomplish and so much that you want to do. But when you bring the numbers to it, when you bring the details to it, you have that realistic lens of what you can actually do given your budget. So given that the staff at MHI were often traveling to other continents, it was pertinent we maintain focus so that we weren't overspending. Now, in our Latin America strategy, for example, we were able to secure a key 7-year project after scaling down our target market and putting greater effort into securing a few key client contracts and maintaining that relationship and strengthening that with very targeted actions. So as a new business owner, time is precious. My recommendations on the key components that you definitely want to include in your strategy are the following. 1, perform an environmental analysis. Take a scan of the business environment. Look at the political and economic environment, especially when you want to sell your products and services internationally. For example, at MHI, when completing a strategy for the African region, the staff undertook an analysis of each country within the continent to identify the ideal markets for us to target our offerings. So we needed to understand certain criteria, such as the political landscape, the ease of doing business, or any other economic or government barriers that existed before we could make a decision on where to target our efforts. You also want to look at the industry itself. You'll want to research the specific vertical you plan to operate in, any relevant subsectors. You'd want to look at potential regulations, the growth trajectory of the industry, threats and emerging opportunities. You could also in this phase include a SWOT analysis. If you haven't heard of this before, this is an analysis of your business's strengths and weaknesses and the opportunities and threats present in the market. And after completing that analysis, you'll want to basically leverage your strengths to take advantage of the opportunities while minimizing your weaknesses and avoiding threats. So 2, develop your marketing goals. Define what you want to achieve. Do you want to increase brand awareness, gain new reach with the target audience, or decrease your customer acquisition costs? Try to utilize goals that aren't too broad, that have focus and can be measured, which I admit can be a challenging exercise sometimes. 3, define your target market and key audiences. Now we'll talk about this more in a minute, so I'll move to 4, analyze the competition. You need to understand your potential competitors and who you will be coming up against in the market. Think of direct and indirect competitors, established competitors that have a good foothold already, new entrants you might want to be wary of. And what is the positioning of each of these competitors in the market? How do they sell themselves? What features and benefits are they positioning themselves around, or what stories are they telling? So some easy tips for this would include going to competitor websites, subscribing to their social channels and media releases. You can look at their investors, their network of partners and collaborators, their business structure, i.e. where their headquarters is located, how many subsidiaries do they have, what other businesses are they linked to, do they have sister companies, for example? What events are they going to and trade shows are they attending? This will give you a really great depth of knowledge on your competitors. You also, as I mentioned before, want to understand how they're positioning their brand and their products and services. So research how these businesses are communicating with their clients. What are they saying? Which of their content or tactics seems to be gaining traction? This is really insightful information. 5, define your value proposition or unique selling proposition. Consider what distinct benefits your product or service has. How do you want to stand out from the crowd of competitors? For example, at EDW, our foreign direct investment team is responsible for selling Winnipeg as a place for businesses to invest. They have to share the Winnipeg story internationally and hit on the unique advantages that we have to offer as a jurisdiction. So in order to do that, not only do we have to understand the benefits of locating in Winnipeg, such as low operating costs or access to clean, renewable hydroelectricity, but also understand how we differ from competitor cities such as Calgary or Toronto. So in order to do that, we have to understand, how does Calgary sell itself? How does Toronto sell itself? And this understanding allows us to paint a picture of the full package we can offer as Winnipeg that investors cannot necessarily find in other jurisdictions. Additionally, we break this value down to a sector level and craft different value propositions depending on the industry the client is from. So Winnipeg's value in the story we tell is different for a manufacturing client to a client working in the film industry. In manufacturing, we might emphasize those low operating costs, but in film, for example, we might emphasize the amazing and diverse, settings for filming that we would have here in our great province. So let's get into our big topic for today, the target market. Why is defining your business's target market important? One of the top reasons that startups fail, about 35% according to CB Insights, is that there's no market need for their product or service. So you can't just focus on building your technology or your product or innovation without consideration to your future customers and without researching the market. In fact, in an ideal world, you would research the gaps in the market, the customer need, and then design the solution. But often we're working in the reverse order. So I'd like to emphasize that your target market cannot be built off a gut feeling. Even if you have years and years of industry experience, it's important to do your research and to validate your assumptions. Keep in mind that your competitors also have industry expertise, and they probably have more of it than you do. One of the other big reasons that startups fail is that they run out of cash. That's why it's critical to create focus in your business and focus on your target market, because you can't do everything with limited resources. Minimizing your operating costs by focusing on one target customer group and do it well. This means you can best tailor your tactics and your delivery to that customer group. This strategy allows you to be responsive to those customers' needs and make adjustments where needed based on their feedback. Ideally, as you review and you respond to this initial group, you can build a loyal following and maximize your revenue potential with this group as you're getting your startup off the ground. Then you can start to expand and add further complexity to your marketing strategy and target more target audiences. So you often hear a variety of marketing terms thrown around, and I've probably used some of them already today, but target market, target audience, customer persona are just some of those. What do they mean? Your target market is the full group of consumers that you plan to target with your product or service. Target audience, think of that as a smaller subset of that customer group. You might plan to approach them with a specific campaign or initiative. A customer persona is a much more focused representation of your target audience. So it's really a representation of your target customer, your ideal customer, along with a deeper understanding of their motivations, their buying behaviors, and their challenges. So here's an example. You make shoes, specifically high heel shoes for women made for style, but not comfort. They're flashy, unique, and they complement that perfect going out outfit. So your target market, women 20 to 45, they earn over 50K annually, and they live in Canadian cities. In comparison, your primary target audience actually could be women that are maybe 20 to 30. They like evenings out with friends. They live in a dense urban area and are junior professionals. Now, your customer persona is even more narrow. This is your ideal customer. You might structure it like this. Meet Mackenzie. She's 25, a junior accountant at Deloitte in Toronto. She goes out with her friends every weekend to lounges, restaurants. She likes to shop and has an affinity for fast fashion. She has disposable income to spend, and she likes to spend time on social media and posting her daily fashions. You can see the difference and how it starts to narrow when you get into more detail and how much more focused your marketing can become when you understand your customer to that level. So where do you start with defining your target market and reaching your customers? Here are 4 foundational steps to get you on the right track. Analyze, research, document, and then plan. First, analyze your product and service. Assess the benefits. Keep in mind that this is not an assessment of just the features of your product. You want to consider the benefit of your offering to consumers. It's not that features aren't important, but you cannot just sell by listing features. You need to really understand how you're helping your consumers and what needs you're solving. So understand the need. What problems are you solving for people? How does your product help ease someone's challenges or frustrations? Does your service take away one of their concerns? What frustrations are your customers actually experiencing? And are they even looking for solutions to these problems? Is their problem or need big enough to warrant action on their part? These are important questions to consider, even if they don't have answers that you like. And who does this appeal to? Are there other solutions to this challenge or customer need yet? And if not, why? Why would customers choose your product or service instead of your competitors? These are just some of the questions and factors you definitely want to consider as you research your offering. Let's consider an example. Back to our high heel women's shoes. What problem are we solving? Well, we know our target audience likes to look stylish and likes to shop. That's great. Are we solving any other challenges for them? Maybe they like to have new trendy outfits. But what are the current market offerings, and why would they consider an alternative to what's out there? Is your product easier to buy? Is it a better price point? Is it a more unique design? If not, it's actually going to be incredibly hard to gain traction in the market because there isn't a substantial existing need in this space in your target customer group. Again, it's important to think through this and to know even when there's, a negative answer, and you want to validate that early on before you go too far in your process. So next, research your customer. you want to assess your customers on a deeper level by looking at both demographic and psychographic factors. For example, demographic information may include age group, their gender, location, marital or family status, education level, their occupation or job role, or their income level. For a business, you might actually look at the organization size, the revenue, the geography, and I believe these factors can be referred to as firmographics. Psychographic factors might look at the values, attitudes, interests, and lifestyles of your consumers, maybe their personal goals or professional goals. And for a B2B business client, you may also want to consider the corporate goals and values. Some additional tips for you. If you have existing customers, review that data. Look at your records, look at your CRM or a customer relationship management system if you have it. And I know it's not necessarily common for startups to have that existing data, but if you have it, review it. And this is the value of loyalty cards for business. I'm sure you have a bunch of them in your wallet like I do. They're literally everywhere now. And it's not just for your benefit. It's not for that sale or that free shipping. It's so companies you purchase from can see what you buy, when you buy it, how you respond to offers, and match that to other demographic details that they have to build out a profile of you and other customers. This is gold for them. So like I said, a lot of startups, you're starting out, you don't necessarily have that data, but I think it does highlight the need to track critical pieces of customer data if possible, so you can start to gain a better and better understanding of your buyers over time. You can then feed these insights back into your strategy and adjust your tactics when and if it's warranted. So some easy to access resources for customer demographic and psychographic info would be sources like Stats Canada. Our company's on there all the time, both for individual information, but then also for business information. We have web or SEO analytics, social media analytics, sources like Google Scholar. You can find studies that have been done that look through these things, and marketing journals are great resources as well. I'm going to dive a little bit more into some market research topics, because as you're understanding or undertaking your market research, you might want to keep in mind the variety of tools and options available to you and what some of these terms mean. So primary research. This is research that's being completed to support a new project. It does not yet exist. It can be very specific. Maybe you're looking to understand the cause and effect of something, or more exploratory in nature. Secondary research is research and the investigation of data, studies or reports that exist, but basically it's information and resources that already exist today, and you're just accessing that or reviewing that. Now, on the other hand, qualitative research, this is used to understand context, meaning, thoughts, experiences. It's generally expressed in words and text. Quantitative research tends to be more numerical data or statistics, looking at, say, the measurement of variables or measurements over time, changes over time of variables. Now, here's some examples that I've kind of slotted in the middle of where these types of research intersect. Now, obviously, some can kind of move to multiple buckets, and there's some overlap here, but this is just to kind of get you thinking about some of the options available and what kind of purpose they can serve. So, for example, if you wanted to explore your potential customers' feelings about your brand, you may design a focus group. This would be exploratory, and it'd be primary research, and it'd be qualitative research. If you instead wanted to capture their opinions, but also track changes over time, you may instead choose to design a survey. And maybe that survey would include a combination of qualitative and quantitative questions. Now, your secondary research could include reviewing previous studies that have been completed. So say you wanted to understand the values and attitudes of the baby boomer age group. You could look at what has been published, or maybe published to date, rather than design your own study, which can be expensive or time consuming. You can also access other sources, like I had suggested, Statistics Canada, or there's the US Census Bureau, social media, analytics, etc. Many of these offer you both qualitative and quantitative data points. And note that I put a star by the secondary research there. So I flagged this because this is really where thrifty and nimble startups can shine. Secondary sources of research can be great and inexpensive, and a great starting point for a business founder. So common market research tactics and sources. This is just a larger list of common research tactics and resources that you can consider or tap into to get started, such as surveys, interviews, focus groups, academic research, census data, forums. In forums, you can actually just observe what people are talking about. You can look where people are talking about products or services that are similar to yours and see what they're saying. It's a great way to do some kind of current research. Trade shows and conferences, another place you can really observe what's happening, both with similar products or services of your competitors or just your target market. What are they talking about? What are they looking for? We've talked about competitor resources. G2 Crowd is an interesting website that kind of dives into some industry needs. Marketing and industry reports are really great resources. I've used these a lot in my career, looking at reports from McKinsey or Forrester, Gartner. You can look at CRM data, as we talked about, other analytics. Search engines are great resources, and even things like Google Trends. Google Trends, you can look up what are people looking at in the Google search engine around the world, and what's trending at any given time, and how often they look for certain things to start to see what maybe the demand for your product or service may be. So if you're lucky enough to have a strong budget or really healthy budget, or if it's really critical that you nail your target market research, you might want to consider hiring an experienced market research firm or agency that can advise you and support you through the process. And I've listed a couple below, like Leger, Probe, etc. And those are, in Winnipeg, but also work outside of Winnipeg as well. So we often talk about B2C or business to consumer perspectives in marketing, but I also want to make sure to highlight the B2B or business to business component, which I mentioned a little bit before. So when selling your product or service to a business and not an end consumer, you're not only selling to an individual, you're selling to multiple individuals, and you're selling within an organization. So I wanted to point this out because it adds a layer of complexity in your marketing. You need to develop an understanding of the business to further refine your target market. You can't just think on an individual basis. As I hinted at earlier, you might want to consider an organization's mandate. What are the values of the company? What commitments have they made? For example, does sustainability drive them? Client service excellence or cost savings? Do their values align with your offering? Or how can you align your offering with their values? You want to consider maybe factors such as their size, their revenues, the company age, the ownership structure, governance, corporate partnerships, their community giving. So let's discuss an example. Say you've built an ERP or enterprise resource planning software tool. You plan to target it to the vice president of technology at large businesses earning 100 million plus in revenues. First, you likely have to sell to multiple levels of staff, not just one. So that VP isn't enough. Even the VP and director level might not be enough. You often have to get a variety of individuals on board that work at different levels of the organization. So that might be the individual that's administering the ERP system that they already have day to day. Might be the manager that runs that department, or the director who leads on IT infrastructure projects that's in a different department altogether. That's as well as your decision maker, maybe your VP or director or CEO. Now, the fun part of this, or maybe the challenging part, is that all of these individuals have different challenges that they're facing and different motivations. So you're going to have to tailor your approach to each audience. Now, to refine your target market, you also want to consider those other business factors that I mentioned. So for example, what stage of growth is the company in? How modern are their operations? Is this an early stage company? Do they have an appetite for a large IT implementation? If a business has modern systems, they may not want to need new solutions. Consider if the business has implemented other technology projects. Perhaps they're very traditional, very risk averse to technology projects. And do they work with consultants? i.e., would they be open to your full product and support and implementation package? Or are they just buying a product off the shelf? These are all really important things to be aware of. So with these additional factors in mind, you can further narrow and refine your target market. So instead of looking at just that VP or director of technology, you may instead frame out your target market like this. We want the VP, we want the director, the manager, and the actual working level staff at a large business with 1,000 plus staff. The business earns 100 million plus in revenues. They haven't gone through an ERP implementation in the last 10 years. They have the budget to engage consultants, and they have an established vendor process. Again, you can see how this deeper dive into the business factors gives you better focus and ensures you're spending your marketing dollars where they matter. And through all of that research, you want to document your findings. You have to record your research, document everything meaningful that you've learned through the process. and then review it and synthesize your research. Start to build boundaries around your target market. Which groups or types of individuals are included and which are excluded? You can start to segment your market by similar groups of individuals and identify key audiences. Now, quantify your target market. You set the boundaries. Now demonstrate the size of your market. Utilize your research and data sources to quantify how many people or organizations fall into your target group. How many people are going to buy from you? What is your revenue potential? For example, let's talk about our women's high heel shoes example again, or scenario again. So for simplicity's sake, let's say you're only ever going to sell locally in Winnipeg. So through your research, you looked at census data to get a sense of the number of women between 20 and 45 that live within the city. Let's say there are 250,000 women in this age group. You also know you want only women that earn over 50K annually. So right away, you can pull out the others that earn less than that. So now maybe your market size reduces to 125 individuals. Next, you pull out all of those homebodies, which you have found to make up 15% of this demographic group. Your market is now 106,000 individuals earning over 50K that like to go out in the evenings. So now, as you can see, as you start to incorporate more detail from your research, you'll be able to fully quantify the potential scale of your target market, or this group of individuals that are likely to buy from you. But you want to keep working that down until you build out your segment detail as well, that initial, say, target audience that you're going after. And you'll want to think about how many customers you can realistically reach within that group with your budget and the specific channels you are utilizing. You want to demonstrate what your actual return will be in terms of customer signups, acquisition, and ultimately purchases. So this exercise will overlap a bit with your planning work. So though I am presenting everything in a linear order, keep in mind that there's certain times you're probably jumping back and forth through this process, or you're working in things in parallel. You might need to adapt earlier content as new insights are gained through the process. Now, this quantification step is an important component of your business plan because these values give you and your future investors or funders the true sense of your opportunity and your revenue potential. Next, we want to build out our customer persona or target audience profile and target market profile. So armed with your research, you have your definition of your target market and key target audience. You can start to build out a profile, build a snapshot of who your customers are at all of those levels. You want to have this information at your fingertips so that you can make decisions on the appropriate marketing tactics. Now you are in the planning phase. You want to integrate your target market findings within your marketing strategy. Armed with this information, you can plan the appropriate tactics to reach your customers. So I've put out some questions for consideration at this stage here. So first, when do your customers start looking for solutions to their problem? When is the best time to approach your customers? Is there a seasonal or timing consideration? Where do your customers seek out information, and who do they ask for recommendations? How involved is this decision-making process? Consider the customer's buying journey, and at what points in that buying journey can they be influenced? Who may already have access to your ideal customers? Would they be open to partnerships, perhaps? Which marketing channels are your customers on or involved with? What channels actually influence their purchasing decision? For example, let's go back to our ERP software scenario. Would you utilize a social media campaign to sell this tool? Are there any social channels where your audience is going to be receptive to your content? Likely not if you're posting on Instagram or TikTok. LinkedIn perhaps could be suitable, but you would need to test these assumptions. So what are the costs associated with the various marketing channels and activities? You might be surprised with how expensive certain marketing tactics can be. So make sure you are aware of what activities cost so you can understand what you can accomplish. Now consider your overall budget for marketing. How much do you actually have to work with? So now you're ready to build out more of a detailed plan as you understand your goals, the business and competitive environment, the profiles and needs of your target market and key audience, as well as those ideal channels to reach this audience. Tactics are really the actions that you implement to reach your customers. These could include marketing online, running a public relations campaign, sponsoring events, or a multitude of other options. Next, you want to include your timeline and your sequencing of tactics. You want to look at the cost for each with consideration again to your total budget, and ideally put some of those measures of success so you know when you're hitting those milestones and you know when you're you're hitting those success points. Lastly, I want to talk a little bit about attracting your customers. So undertaking the work that I've described thus far isn't quick or easy, but it will give you the confidence to attract your customers in the right way. Now, through your research, you should know now what channels your clients are on and which channels they respond to. You need to select the option that fits your budget and your customer profile, and think outside the box. Don't just jump right into web and social as your primary tactics, especially for B2B audiences. You may instead need to have a plan that focuses on direct interactions with your target clients, perhaps at trade events, industry conferences, or maybe one-on-one meetings is where you need to have an interaction so you can actually sell. Now, when you build out your marketing assets and content, you need to have key messages that are going to resonate with your audience. You need to consider the values, attitudes, lifestyle, and preferences that you found through your research. And lastly, you need to inspire action to buy. You have to create a call to action, create a time limiting reason to act, and be sure to connect with your customer at the appropriate buying point or appropriate points in their buying journey. That's when you might have the most opportunity to influence them in the right ways. So thank you for taking the time to listen today, and I'd be happy to answer any questions at this point.
Thank you so much, Amanda. That was incredible, and that was a very comprehensive overview of a marketing strategy. That's well done. Thank you. Okay, so opening it up now to questions for you. I did see one in the chat here. The first question is, which all creative ways of marketing research would you suggest to get viable results from a targeted audience, as sending surveys to the target market audience may not produce a viable data result?
Okay, sorry, can you say that again? That was a long one. So you're looking.
Absolutely. So basically, which is the most creative way of marketing research to get a viable result for your targeted audience, as sometimes surveys can't really provide you with a very accurate data result?
Honestly, I think it really depends, which is, maybe not the best answer, because it really depends on what your offering is, what your product or service is, and who you're trying to attract, right? So surveys may not be perfect, but in combination with other methods, they may offer you, a breadth of information that you can pull together to get the best sense of your target market. Some creative things that you could do are, I think, around that kind of observatory research, right? So go where your clients are, observe what they're talking about. Go onto a forum, go to Reddit, see what they're talking about with respect to your type of offering, and just observe. Go to a trade show, talk to people, see what they're saying, ask them questions. Like, these are things that you can do fairly inexpensively to get really good qualitative information on your customer groups. And it might cost a little bit, but it might not be as substantial as designing a really, I guess, lengthy or, well-structured survey that you might want to do or deliver through like a marketing research agency. So I would say observatory research is a really creative one. And then, really leverage that secondary research. There's so many resources out there. There's so many companies that have already done research, and it's publicly available or available for a small fee. There's so much out there that I think that's a really great starting place as well.
Oh, great. Thank you. So any other questions, please feel free to put them in the chat or the Q&A. Another one I have is, how can someone prep for a cold call?
Okay. I think this just comes back to doing your research, right? We do this a lot in our day-to-day work. My team is often reaching out to, people that they haven't met before. I think wherever possible, you want a warm introduction. So if you can find someone that knows that individual or that can connect you to that business, that's a great place to start. If you don't have that opportunity, do your research. So research the company, go on their social media channels, research the individual. What's their background? What's going to resonate with them? Maybe they've been involved in interesting projects before that are similar to projects you've been invested in. Wherever you can create those personal connection points with the person that you're speaking with, I think you're going to have a better time building a relationship, because ultimately marketing, business development, sales, it's all about building relationships with people. So that is what I would recommend, is just do your research and build those connections through shared experiences or similarities or aligned values.
Perfect. Okay, another question here. Hello, for selling products, how does the platform you sell on affect how you're able to reach your customers? For example, selling on eBay versus opening a Shopify store.
I mean, I think it depends, right? I think when you're looking at eBay, you're going to want to research who they're attracting. Like, what kind of audience does eBay offer you? What kind of clientele does eBay offer you versus, I mean, Shopify, I guess it's slightly different, right? But you're going to want to look at the various channels that are available out there. So different websites, for example, who their audiences are. It's just like if you're advertising in a publication, who does that publication actually reach? Because if it's not reaching the people that you want to target, then you might want to, you know, look to a different website. So I think the more you can get information on specifically the types of customers that are attracted to those channels, the better you're going to be able to make your decision on which channel is most appropriate, given your offering and the customers that you're specifically targeting.
Wonderful. Okay, and so what is your best tip for generating hot leads?
Interesting. Hot lead. I would say, you know, I'm thinking of in the context of some of the work that I've done, which has been a lot has been focused in B2B worlds. And I think the best way that we've been able to achieve really solid leads is, I mean, probably in-person events. So going to trade shows, going to conferences, sometimes that's the best way to interact with a captive audience. And I'm not talking, these don't have to be 3,000 to 5,000 person events. Sometimes the most intimate events are the ways that you can connect with your customers the best. And then also through, say, lead generators. There's people that it's their job to actually generate leads, and it can be pricey, but it doesn't always have to be. You can actually, you know, purchase lead lists or work with them to kind of do the initial part of the work for you to give you validated leads that might be suitable for your business. And that saves you a lot of time and effort. And then you just basically start to have that relationship with the lead once you know it's already appropriate for your offering, and you can start to engage and do like discovery with them and understand what they're looking for and better find that fit for your product or service.
Oh, perfect. And last question is, when do I know I need to hire a marketing assistant when starting a business?
I mean, it's a good question. And I think it's tough to answer, but I would say if you don't have capacity to do the work and you're running, you know, so fast and you have so many other things going on that you're not able to give it the time and energy to do your market research well and to do your market strategy, like your marketing strategy well, then to me, that would be the appropriate time to kind of build your team and bring in some expertise, even if it's more junior level expertise, to really focus on this and do it well. Because again, marketing will drive the revenues of your business, and the revenues of your business keep your business afloat and keep it in growth mode. So I think if you're not able to give it the time and attention it needs, that's the point to bring an assistant to help you. And you could bring on somebody that's maybe more junior, or sometimes there's grants available for students or for staff to support in various ways. And it would be worth exploring those as well, because it can help kind of offset the costs of doing that.
Perfect. Okay, well, thank you so much. I believe that's our last question. If anyone else has any questions, quickly put them in the chat now. And if not, put your love for Amanda in the chat. She did a fantastic job. And just thanks again, Amanda. That was very valuable information, and we will absolutely make sure that all of you get a copy of this recording along with the presentation itself to reference. And just thanks again, Amanda. That was incredible. And we're so happy that you were able to join us today.
Thanks for having me. It was a pleasure.